Baby, don't make me spell it out for you. All of the feelings that I got for you can't be explained, but I can try for you. Yeah, baby, don't make me spell it out for you. You keep on asking me the same questions and second guessing all my intentions. Should know by the way I use my compression.
Check, 1 2 1 2.
Confessions. It's like I'm powerful with a little bit of tender and emotional, sexual bender. Mess me up, yeah, but no one does it better. There's nothing better. That's just the way you make me feel. That's just the way you make me feel. So good, so good, so good, so real. That's just the way you make me feel. That's just the way you make me feel. You know I love you, so please don't stop it. You got me right here in your jean pocket, laying your body on the shag carpet. Oh, you know I love you, so please don't stop it. It's like I'm powerful with a little bit of tender and emotional, sexual bender. Mess me up, yeah, but no one does it better. There's nothing better. That's just the way you make me feel. That's just the way you make me feel. So good, so good, so good, so real. That's just the way you make me feel. That's just the way you make me feel. That's just the way that I feel now, baby. Good God, I can't help it. Hey, that's just the way that I feel. Yeah, please, I can't help it. It's like I'm powerful with a little bit of tender and emotional, sexual bender. Mess me up, yeah, but no one does it better. There's nothing better. Damn. That's just the way you make me feel. That's just the way you make me feel. So good, so good, so good, so good, so good. That's just the way you make me feel. That's just the way you make me feel. That's just the way you make me feel. You make me feel so good, so good, so good, so good, yeah. So good, so good, so good. That's just the way you make me feel.
Even when you're upset, use words of love. Because God is love. Allah is love. Jehovah is love. So don't let your expressions, even of anger, be confused or misconstrued. Turn them into ways of expression that can be understood by using words of love.
All right, people. This is CMSC 355. Welcome to the new and improved version where you guys and gals can see me in full HD glory. For instance, check it. Whoa. How's it going? Hope y'all are doing great. Yeah, so we're gonna get started in just a minute or two, but I'm gonna give everybody a chance to get on today, a little bit more of a chance than normal, because we're gonna start off with the quiz. So, for those of you that are already here, maybe just be meditating upon, CSMC 355 and the things that I may or may not quiz you on here in just the next few minutes. And I'll give everybody just like 1 minute more to get on, and then we're gonna go ahead and do this quiz and get started for today. Hope y'all are doing great. And it sounds like thanks for the heads up. situation.
Oh me, oh me, oh me, oh my. Oh me, oh me, oh me, oh my.
Trying to fix that mic situation real quick. Not sure why that is so pumped up, but it is. How about that? Is that mic sounding better now? Mic sounding better now. Check, 1 2 1 2. Hello, how y'all doing? Mic is better. Mic is not better. Alright, sorry about that. It's probably the music that's causing the problem here. How is that mic sounding right now? Is that mic sounding good? Can y'all hear me good now? Check, 1 2 1 2. Alright, we are turning it up. Y'all can hear me better now, I believe. Alright. Alright, I'll turn myself up just a little bit more. Let me know if you hear any problems with the mic again. Alright. Again, hope y'all are doing great. This is CMSC 355. Let me make myself normal size again. I just wanted to show off how awesome my new webcam is, whatever. Alright. So, we're going to go ahead and get started for today. Hope y'all are doing great. What we're going to do to start for today is this. There is a grade scope quiz that is out there right now. Go check it out and do it. It is a... Excuse me. Hold on one second. All right. It's a very simple quiz. 4 questions. You only have 10 minutes to take it. 4 questions, 10 minutes. Go, go, go. Get on Gradescope right now and take it. You have 10 minutes to take it. Let your friends know who aren't in here that they need to, once you start this quiz, you have 10 minutes to take it. I'm going to give you all 10 minutes right here for those of you that are in class or 5 or 6 minutes at least. So go ahead and take it. And we'll be back to start the class right after that. This is an open notes quiz, open book, open notes, not open chat. Don't chat to each other. But it is open notes, absolutely. Go ahead and get it done. Hit me up in the chat if you have any questions. And when you're done, come back and hit like one of these icons in Menti so I know you're done so we can get started when the majority of you are done. Until that time, enjoy the music and we'll see you back in just a few minutes.
Do you remember? I remember when you laughed when I cut my perm off and you rated me a 6. I was like, damn. But even back then with the tears in my eyes, I always knew I was the...
You told us we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men and women are created equal and that they are endowed by their creator.
You guys can take this later if you feel like it. It's just convenient to take it now as well. You'll have about 10 minutes to take it now during class. But you can also take it at midnight. It's due at, I think, 3 a.m. tomorrow, of course. So, check it out. You got about, after this song, you got one more song to finish it up right here. And then we're going to get started. Ether is the ether, and cloud is the cloud. No, ether is an entirely different thing. Just so you know, ether is a different thing. I can't give you any more info on the ether. That's so helpful. Let me give you a hint. The answer is not ether. Somebody's asking, is there automated grading? There is automated grading. I'll just also check through them though before I release them. Sorry, I don't like to auto release grades because sometimes auto grading is not right. I could have actually released it with this one if I'd have thought through it, but I'm not sure how to release it immediately. Sorry about that. We'll go over it real quick afterwards, maybe. Well, no, we gotta wait till next class. Sorry.
Handcuffed in a bando, white boy in his sandals, police like a Rambo, blow it out like a candle, Sambo. Me and you was friends, but to them we the opposite. The same mistake, I'm in jail, you on top of you living life while I'm walking around mopping tech kid, backpack, no you a college kid. All I wanted was to break the rules like you. All I wanted was for them to love me too. But no matter where it was, I always stood out. Black Waldo, dancing with the thick brows. We was both running naked at the luau. We was both on shrooms, praying face down, waist down. Remember when they told you I was too black for you? And now my black popping like a bra strap on you. I was kicked out, said I'm too loud. Kicked out, said I'm too proud. But all I really ever felt was stressed out. Kinda like my afro when it's pressed out.
Alright, one more song and then we're gonna hit it. Hit me up in those let's see. Hit me up on the icons in Minty when you're done so we can know when to move on. I'm gonna be configuring this green screen real quick. Otherwise, let me know if you got questions in the chat of YouTube. Alright. One more song and then we're hitting it.
Sometimes I'm mystery, sometimes I'm free, depending on my mood, on my attitude. Sometimes I wanna roll or stay at home, walk in contradiction, get some factual and fiction. A little crazy, little sexy, little cool, little rough around the edges, but I keep it smooth. I'm always left to center and it's right where I belong. I'm the random mind and don't you hear in major songs, and I like that. I don't really give a f if I was just the only one who likes that.
Alright, a couple questions I'm seeing. You can now see the Minty code. And somebody asked, what chair to use? I don't know, it came from VCU. It's just a generic office chair. Feels good. I think it was the guy before me in my office that had it. Somebody's asking, how is this activity graded? It is graded as an in-class activity. You are absolutely right. Great questions. Alright, and if we get more than 20 people to hit the icons in Minty, we'll go ahead and move on. Otherwise, it'll be at the end of the song. So far, we got 9 people hitting those icons in Minty. So just let me know if you're ready to move on. Otherwise, contemplate the meaning of my awesome t-shirt that my sister gave me.
I remember when you called me weird. We was in math class, 3rd row. I was sitting by you right before Mr. Ammons' class. Cause my mama couldn't afford new J's Polo, thrift store, thrift clothes. That was all I knew. Do you remember? I remember when you laughed when I cut my perm off and you rated me a 6. I was like, damn. But even back then with the tears in my eyes, I always knew I was the... I like that.
All right, we're up to almost there. We're up to 18 people hitting us up on the icons. A couple more, we're moving on. All right, so it looks like the number of icon hits got up to 20 right as the song ended. That's a little suspicious. I guess y'all just wanted to hear the rest of the song. Anyway, let's go ahead and get moving on today's class. Announcements for today. Thank you for doing a grade scope thing. That's going to be a class activity grade, as you might have guessed. The project is due on Friday. Can anybody tell me what part of the project is due on Friday? Hit me up in the chat. What part of the project is due on Friday? Hit me up in the chat if you know what part of the project is due on Friday. What are y'all turning in? The CI, the CI and the unit test, that's exactly right. CI is standing for continuous integration. You're going to set up using GitHub Actions your project and make sure that it is building and executing at least one unit test. The unit test can be super trivial. It just has to run and check something. So get that in by Friday. However, you're going to want to show all the commits that your team has been making over the past few weeks. So if you haven't already, make sure you set up a CI, continuous integration action, for every thread, every branch that people are committing to on your team, because you're going to want to show all those commits, executing builds on CI. Make sure you set up a GitHub action for every branch in your project that people are committing to. All right, hope that makes sense to you. If it doesn't, ask your teammates, and you need to know what that last sentence means. Okay. Now, somebody's asking in the chat, the continuous integration is supposed to be a unit test. No, you just have to run one unit test at least. I believe that's what I had, one unit test, but it basically just needs to build the project. That's the way more important thing. One thing I wanted to reiterate here, y'all are doing a great job in class today of participating, but I want to mention class is not that fun online unless we are all participating, like in the chat and on Minty. And, on Slack even. And so those are things that I want to encourage y'all to continue to do. Get in there and participate. That makes it a lot more fun. There's a site called Let Me Google That For You, which is a really funny way to answer your friends' questions when they ask questions about that maybe they should Google. However, I'm not trying to shame anybody. This is a legitimate thing that young developers get wrong all the time. People often just ask their teammates, like I've done this as a young developer, whenever they have any question, they just ask their teammates immediately, and guess what? Eventually that teammate who's asking all these people questions gets to be known as the annoying teammate because they interrupt people all the time. So you always do, before you ask your teammates questions, you do want to do your due diligence in terms of Google searching. However, on the other hand, if you can't figure it out within, like, let's say 5 minutes, it is something that maybe, well, let's say 10 minutes if it's something complicated, 5 minutes if it's something trivial, you should feel free to ask your teammates because you are a team. So it's a balance between asking people for help, but not too soon because you don't want to be known as that guy or gal. So great. See, y'all participating already has led to some discussion, which will help you when you go to be a software developer in the field. Continue to participate in class. That's awesome. I love it. Your teammates love it. I mean, your classmates love it. It makes things like more interesting for all of us. So I noticed we had a class activity on last Friday, and only 65 of the 92 people that are still registered for this class. We lost 2 people since the beginning of the course, but we still have 92 people submitted a class activity. And to be honest, this is a little troubling. I know that, because that class activity was, I believe, worth 100 points. So that's a significant one. And so I wanted to check in and make sure everybody's doing okay. We're going to talk about it in a little more depth in a minute, but that is definitely worrying. Now, there's one more thing that I'm going to say in the announcements part of the class. Can anybody guess what this is going to be? What am I going to say next? What do I always say during announcements? If you want to be successful in this class, what should you do? Commit, 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 commit. That is the main thing that you can do to be successful in this class. If you're somebody that kind of screwed up the first test and, does some class activities, but not all of them, but you committed the heck out of your project, you can still do pretty darn well in this class, okay? So committing to your project is the number one thing you can do to be successful in this class. Of course, they can't be garbage commits, but they need to be real commits, coordinated with your team, working together. All right. Regarding the lack of activity submissions, I wanted to check in with y'all. Everybody is starting to hit the wall, I guess, a little bit in terms of this whole virtual COVID semester. So I wanted to check in. How's it going? Let me know what's going on in Minty. 4401072. Let me know, if you're struggling. This is all anonymous, as you know. If you're struggling, if you're thriving, if you're hating virtual life, if you love it. I personally really like teaching virtually in a lot of ways because it allows me to use some cool technology. But I also miss seeing people in person because it's, I know you guys and gals as a name in the chat more than a face for most of you. Some of you have actually met with, but, it's weird to know you by your online your online tag more than your actual face. So that's weird. But on the other hand, it's a lot like, internet life is like that. So kind of used to it. So all right, so interesting. This is interesting. Somebody thought that the only submission for GitHub Actions was the one due this Friday. Didn't realize there was one for setting it up. If that's the case, it's not a big deal because remember we dropped I think it's the bottom one, at least one, maybe 2 of the class activities. And so that's not a big deal if you miss one. Yeah, and this is kind of, I feel and have heard this from some people. They're struggling. It's hard. This is, to some extent, this is college life, I hate to tell you. College life is busy and a challenge. But yeah, I feel you, and I'm trying to make sure that my workload for this class is reasonable and not too much, because I do hear things like this. And staying motivated is hard. I'm trying to do my part to keep y'all engaged as much as possible. So I'm trying to keep it engaging for y'all. We'll see what we can get up to. Let's see. So Yeah, I feel you there, absolutely. Yeah, so this is interesting. We are kind of hitting this point where we have this kind of end of the semester push in a lot of classes, and so there is a little bit of a push towards the end, but remember, we're going to finish school way early this year. So in December, for instance, you can just totally sleep the entire month, and that's going to be great. So while it's hard right now, you are going to have a break coming up. Keep that in mind. All right, I feel y'all. I just wanted to take a little bit of a poll of the class. I guess I need to move on though so we can lecture. All right, so last time we talked about the observer class. We had an inventory which had a bunch of items, and then remember we had an observer which would register itself with the inventory when items were added or removed from that inventory. It would notify all the observers, which are things like pie charts or list views. Today we're going to go over a quick review of inheritance, and we're going to talk a little bit about the template method, which is a simple but very helpful design pattern. All right, so inheritance review, I'm going to go over this a little bit quickly, and then we're going to have a in-class activity, not one that's graded, but one that I want y'all to do. It should be very easy, and it should be a way to have a little bit of fun today. All right, inheritance review. For instance, we can have things, superclasses, or in this case, an interface that is an employee, and then we would have subclasses such as a programmer or a manager, two different types of employees. We would, we might have a methods defined in the superclass, well, in the interface, called getName or getCompensation, and those would need to be defined down here in the concrete subclass, okay? They have to implement these two things. Hope you're with me so far. These two things might have some different subclass methods that aren't the same. Like a manager might do things like manage, and a program might do things like program that the other doesn't do. But they have these two things in common, and that's why we pulled them out and made them part of the interface. Now, interesting thing here is that we did this in an interface at first, but then, getName and getCompensation isn't something that's really going to change based on whether you're a programmer or a manager. So we can actually push those methods up into what is now a concrete class. Okay, there's no longer an interface. It is a concrete class, an employee class that has a name and a salary, and we can implement those things once here and not have to re-implement them below. Hope that makes sense. We're pushing that functionality here into the concrete superclass. However, we still have these different methods in these subclasses. So, just so you remember a little bit about inheritance, we can have an employee who is now a manager, and that Alice variable is an employee type. Okay, that's static typing, meaning it is an employee type. And you can, of course, assign a manager to an employee, and we can do that because a manager is a type of employee, Liskov substitution. All right. However, if we were to assign that Alice, which is an employee variable, to a manager field, we would actually have to cast it because of the static typing of the Java language. So we would need to statically change that Alice, which is an employee, to a manager. And this would only work if Alice was, in fact, originally a manager. You can use the instance of or the get class check to double check if Alice is a manager, but just know this is something you might have to deal with, casting of a type to its supertype or of a type to its subtype whenever you're dealing with inheritance. Now, in terms of fields, there's different kind of strategies you can use to create fields in super and sub types. For instance, if you only intend to use the variables in the superclass, you can use private variables, and that means that the subclass can't even see it. Or you could use a protected variable, and I think that makes more sense, so that the employee class knows about the name, but the manager class could also access it if need be. All right, so accessibility defines who can see these variables, and it's usually a good idea to make these kind of classes in a inheritance hierarchy protected. I mean, these fields in an instance hierarchy, inheritance hierarchy protected. Kind of similar idea with methods, right? Like, you probably want to, well, first of all, for inheritance, we often have public methods. Yeah, so somebody's actually putting up a great point about subclassing and inheritance, and like, yeah, these things make basic sense, but I don't have a lot of times that I really need to do a lot of subclassing, and so I kind of forget they exist. And that's definitely a threat towards object-oriented programming. Object-oriented programming is definitely less, let's say, popular than it used to be. People used to be completely sold out on it, and they really thought everything needed to be objects, and they had extremely object-oriented systems. And now people have chilled out about that a little bit, and even pushed back against object-oriented programming a bit, saying is this really necessary? But it continues to be one of the best ways to organize our code, at least right now. Even if it is just a way to create, let's say, modules or distinct classes that kind of encapsulate functionality. So it's not perfect, and maybe there'll be something better in the future, but objects are still valid, and inheritance still can be helpful in some cases. You just have to use it only when appropriate. All right, again, if you have a get compensation method that is public here, you can override it. Even if it's protected, you could override it. However, if you had a private method, you couldn't go ahead and override it. An interesting thing here is when you have an employee that has a get compensation and a manager class which overrides the get compensation, when you call this employee.getCompensation, which method do you think it's called? Let me know in the chat, which method do you think it's called? Looking at this example. Does anybody have any guess? Somebody's guessing the employee version. Do we have any votes in the other direction? Yep. Although I haven't written this code and run it, I believe it would be the manager, because this will always delegate to its lowest subclass that implements itself. So I believe this would go to the manager. However, I just want to bring up the point that you need to know when you do these kind of things like overriding, you need to know which one you're calling. So when you were debugging this code, you may want to put a special breakpoint here for the first time and see hey, which one's being called. It's not really that important which one is being called right now, because you're going to forget that kind of when you go out in the field. It is important to know hey, when I override that method, I need to figure out which one's being called in the actual runtime and double check that, make sure everything's cool. Okay, so there's another concept in inheritance that you need to know about, and that is the abstract class. For instance, if you have a figure, which is an interface, and you design something like a basic figure, which has a lot of things that are common to figures, that is then further subclassed by a rectangle and an ellipse, which are real things, this basic figure is something that you can't actually draw, which is part of this figure class. So it's not something that you actually instantiate. It's something called an abstract class. And the idea here is you have a public abstract figure, which implements figure, and this thing isn't actually instantiated. You only instantiate subclasses of it. However, it is a great place to put common functionality, and we call it abstract because, again, you never do new basic figure. You always do new ellipse or new rectangle, because you can't actually draw a basic figure because it's not a real thing. So this abstract class cannot be instantiated. It's checked by the compiler, and it doesn't need to supply an implementation for all the methods in the interface, because the subclasses can go ahead and do that. So somebody's asking, so to call an employee class method, you would have to override the method, correct? Let's go back to that example really quick. So if you were going to call the employee.getCompensation in this particular example where you have a manager subclass, I think you wouldn't want to have this overridden stuff here. So I think that would be the most important thing, is you wouldn't want to override this method here. But again, double check this with runtime and breakpoints if you want to know exactly which one's being called in this situation. The point is to know that if you override a superclass method, you're going to want to figure out which one you're calling. I believe it's this subclass. All right. Are there any more questions on subtyping, inheritance, things like that? I'm getting cold. Any other questions? Just put them right here in Minty. We can talk through them real quick. And we're going to do a quick activity. Any questions from the audience, put them right here in Minty. Let me know what you think. All right, I'm not seeing any. I'm going to give you guys about 10 more seconds. Function versus method. Everything's a method in Java, right? So everything's a method. I use those words interchangeable. Sorry about that. It should just be saying method. Can you explain why it is manager instead of employee? Okay, so just to go back to that point, what I believe happens in the Java object-oriented call system is that if you call a method on an object, it calls the lowest in the hierarchy tree implementation. So I believe that's what's happening there. However, I didn't write the code and run it before class, so if you want to know exactly which one is called, you should write that code and test it yourself. It'll take you about 10 minutes. The point is you need to know that inheritance affects which methods are called, and you need to make sure you are calling the right one in the object inheritance tree. What roles do constructors play in subtyping? So, let's see, constructors and subtyping are often like this. You would instantiate your subclass, like let's say an ellipse, and sometimes you would even call super.construct basically, to make sure that everything is set up exactly like you would want it to. So constructors may also want to handle, move up the inheritance tree in order to make sure everything is set up correctly. Is employee equals new manager the same as manager? No. Okay, so this is not, these are the same, but they're being stored differently. The thing on the bottom, manager employee equals new manager, the variable is stored as a manager. So you can never put an employee in that slot to store it. The thing at the top is storing things as an employee, so you can put a manager there or an employee. It's really just a matter of the top thing is more generic and probably more flexible, and in most cases you would want to choose the top code here because it's actually using the inheritance tree. Could you have used super to get the employee function instead of manager? You probably could. Again, this is a question of how the compiler of Java works, which I haven't memorized everything that the Java compiler does. Super dot whatever often will call the super classes method. So if in the subclass you called super dot whatever, that would actually execute the super classes method. These are great questions. I think y'all are getting into this. Great questions. Thank you very much. All right, here's what we're going to do today just to go over this idea of subtyping. We're going to have to, all right, what I want y'all to do is to create a class diagram using subtyping that makes sense. And then you're going to, write a class diagram and take a picture of it or a screenshot of it or whatever and put it in this folder. The reason that we're going to do this is we're just going to make sure that the things that y'all are designing with subclasses kind of make sense. Like, hey, that's a good situation to use that in, or no, that's a bad idea, don't use it there. So think of a case that makes sense, maybe from your class project, and create a class diagram that uses subtyping from there. Here's the link of where you want to put that. It would be better if you didn't reuse one from the midterm, by the way, in terms of this particular example, because I want to see the process of y'all thinking of scenarios where subtyping might be good to use and using it. So again, create a class diagram that uses subtyping, put them where that link is. I'm going to give y'all just a few minutes and then we're going to talk through a few of them. So create a class diagram. And we're going to look at them in just a minute. Here's some tunes for now. Hit me up with questions in the chat if you have any.
You're so damn electric, you know you got that juice. You know you got that juice. You know you got that juice. Now squeeze all that passion fruit. Ain't no one fresher than you. Ain't no one fresher than you. And if they try to break you, you say down, 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 down. You're number one, and don't you down, 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 down. Stop. No shot. I got the juice. I'm the chaser, don't need a mixer. I got the juice. Baby, I'm the plug in the filter. I got the juice. How many damn times got to tell ya? I got the juice. Baby, I got the juice. Down, down. Don't think about it. Down, down. Don't think about it. Down, down. You're number one, and don't you die. Now go on, girl, and use that sauce. If you don't, then that's your loss. If you don't, then that's your loss. Turn it up, don't turn it off. Got everybody looking in your cup. You know they wanna drink it up. You know they wanna drink it up. And if they try to take it, you say down, down. Don't think about it. Down, down. Don't think about it. Down, down. You're number one, and don't you die. Down, down. Don't think about it. Down, down. Don't think about it. Down, down. Don't think about it. Stop. Now she got the juice. I'm the chaser, don't need a mixer. I got the juice. Baby, I'm the plug in the filter. I got the juice. How many damn times got to tell ya? I got the juice. Baby, I got the juice.
It's a free scene in it. Yeah. Wet dream in it. Waking up like wean in it. Me and your jeans in it. Yeah. Yellow like pee in it. Oh no, I mean me in it. I know it ain't lean in it, but it's got a little pink in it. Trying to make you wanna drink and it got a little cream in it. But I feel a little bean in it. Work me up like caffeine in it. Dripping like an extra large, but the top is too small. Yeah, here let me wipe you off. Look inside, I can't wait to get you home at all. Nah, these cup holders are small. Can't believe what is in it. Tastes like a good time. My brain was foggy in my business. Yeah, short-term memory fried. Rain on. What you got, girl, is tough as yeah. Can't nothing else with it. Yeah, press please, that fresh squeezed juice. There can never be a supplement. Yeah.
Got juice for all my lovers, got juice for all my wives. My juice is my religion, got juice between my thighs. Now ask the angels, baby, my juice is so divine. Ain't no juice quite like yours, ain't no juice quite like mine. If you try to grab my pussy, got this pussy grab you back. If you try to grab my pussy, got this pussy grab you back. If you try to grab my pussy, got this pussy grab you back. This pussy grab you back, give you pussy cataracts. 속삭여줄래 넌 날개 부는 데서부터 It's new love 피어날 듯해 날개 달린 신기루 How it's true now 날 감싸 안아주는 wind 새로 깨어나는 느낌 나를 채워가는 눈빛
Alright, we're getting at least one entry in. I need to see about 10 before we discuss this. Get those in. Get them in as soon as you can. They don't have to be perfect. We just need to have something to discuss. Get them on in here. Upload at that link. 내 주위 모든 것이 분명 접힌 중이다 그 스릴이 맴돌듯 I better be around you 시작은 알겠지 이제는 맘의 hurricane Been there, never been there 길을 다 점점 달라질까 내려가지 way too far 새로운 It's a new dreams make come true Wanna fly like a butterfly 날 내려가 wings 2, 3, 4. Alright, we got 4 up there. Just get in a few more and then we're going to go ahead and get started to look at them. Alright, get those uploaded. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started looking at a few of these. Thank you guys and gals for participating. That makes this class a lot more fun and you learn more. So that's great. Let's take a look at a few. Oops, let me refresh because we got more than that. And let's take a look at a few of these. For instance, this looks like pretty interesting work. Here we have a graph and a bar graph that is a superclass. Well, okay. Who can spot one thing? This is actually pretty good in most ways, but there's one thing that is wrong about it. Can anybody spot what might need to be fixed about this one? But this is really good in many ways. So whoever submitted this, good work. Just one thing that I want to say about it. Who can tell me in the chat? Yep, arrows are in the wrong direction. I think you just wanted to put the arrow right here. So the arrows should not be pointing down, they should be pointing up. And so bar graph, if the arrow was pointing up, is a subclass of graph. Scatterplot is a subclass of graph. And you got great things like set data and get data and draw right here in the superclass. Again, good work. And then we got things like show trend line only in scatterplot, not in the bar graph. Again, good understanding of a subclass, superclass kind of thing. Can anybody tell me, do you think this graph should be a abstract or a concrete class? Who can tell me? Graph should be an abstract or a concrete class? Abstract or concrete? Should graph be an abstract class or a concrete class? We're starting to get in an answer. Let's see if somebody else can come with an answer here. And it looks like the majority of people are saying abstract, and I would also agree that this should be abstract because you can't really draw a graph, a generic graph. There's no such thing. You can draw things like a bar graph or a scatter plot. So you would make that graph generic. Let's look through. Here's an awesome one just from the point of view that the drawing is awesome. But here's what I want to say about this one. This is great because we have a public class car and we have subclasses of a minivan, a sedan, and a pickup truck. All right, so you could argue whether a pickup truck is a type of a car. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But this definitely this person understands super types and subtypes and how that might be used. So there we go. That's nice. Here we have an animal which has things like noise, health, and damage, and it can do things like attack or make sound or eat. And a pet is a subclass of an animal such that it has things like an owner, an address, a veterinarian, and it can do things like show happiness to its owner. And this is cool because this is like a different take on things. You know, this is like just generic animals, and then this is a specific type of animal, but not like a dog. This is like a pet, and you can imagine there would be different subclasses here, such as a dog, a cat, things like that. All right, good. Polygon is the superclass, square and triangle subclass, and you can see that they implement the same method. You don't actually have to put this in the subclass, the get sides. I mean, it's implied that it's there. But anyway, yeah, good. That's good. And we see some more shape-related ones. Here we have publication, and we have book and magazine below it. Again, it makes a lot of sense. A neighborhood contains a bunch of houses, and these houses can be either a townhouse or a mobile house. Can you tell me, do you think this house is a concrete class or an abstract class? Who can tell me? Do you think that this house is a concrete or abstract class? Anybody got a guess? Anybody else got a guess? We got to go in just a sec, so hit me up. All right, we got some good answers, and I think y'all are definitely starting to understand this. For instance, house could be, I like the answer, could be concrete, right? Because it doesn't have to be, it could still be abstract, because maybe there's just like a regular house down here, like a wood house or something. But it could be doing double duty, where a house is just like, that's a generic house. Or if you want to define it just a townhouse, that's below it, or a mobile house, that's below it. So it could be concrete in this case. It probably would be, unless you had another subtype that was clearly taking the place of that. All right. Well, those are some great answers. Thank you all for those answers. Let's go back real quick. Looks like we got a fair amount of diagrams. We might look at a few more next time. Thank you all for your participation. Again, that makes class fun. That's going to be it for class today. I'll go over the rest of this lecture on Friday, but I do want to go ahead and move forward to make sure I can answer any questions that y'all have. That is the official end of lecture for today. However, I'm going to stick around for just a minute or two in case you have any questions. Ask me anything. If you have any questions, stick around and ask them right here in Menti. If you do not, then go ahead and get the heck out of here. Hope you all have a great day, and I will see you on Wednesday. Somebody's asking, if you override a method from a concrete parent class, does it need to show up in the UML diagram of the subclass? So there's different thoughts on this, but I would say in general, no. So if you are gonna, just override a method, meaning let's call it implement. I think you're saying you want to say override there. If you're gonna override a method from a concrete parent class, you don't need to re-show that in every subclass. So I would say in general, no. If you want to be really clear about where you're overriding those and in which subclasses you're going to override those, you could do it. There's no rule against doing it, but I would say in general, no. Great question. Nice. Anybody else got some questions? What do you think? Oh, there's a question. For the project due Friday, we have to set up continuous integration for each of our branches. Right. Yes. So the point for Friday is that you're going to want to get credit for all the commits that your group has made. The only way that you can show that within the context of continuous integration is if you have set up continuous integration for any branch on which people are committing. So set up that action for every branch that people are committing on, or alternatively, get everybody to commit on the same branch, like a development branch. Great question. Thank you. Does the quiz have coding involved? The answer to that is no. The quiz does not have coding involved. It is a 4-question multiple choice quiz. It's not too tough, especially if you've been attending class. I would say it's not tough at all. Make sure you read through and select the best answer for each question. Don't rush, but it is something that should take you 10 minutes or less. And there is no coding. It is just multiple choice. Somebody's asking, in the software engineering industry, do you prefer someone with great communication skills but poor programming skills, or someone with poor communication skills but great programming skills? So this is an interesting question, because I would actually prefer neither of these people. I've worked with both of these types of people, and these are people, in either case, I would prefer not to hire. Now, the rarer person is probably somebody, if I had to hire one of these, I would hire somebody with great programming skills. However, they are not very useful if they can't communicate. So being a software engineer is actually being competent to good at programming, but also being competent to good at communication. That's what makes a good software engineer. If you want to just be a great programmer, then you maybe should focus. Being just a great programmer with bad communication is actually not being a great programmer. There's very few things that this kind of person is useful for, because they can't work on teams, and you have to have teams to do, big programming projects. So again, both skills are super important. Both of these people, in this question are not very useful. You need to have both. I would strongly prefer competent programmer and competent communicator to either of these right here. You need to be good at both. Somebody's asking, is the project submission group or personal? If it's group, is there just one unit test needed? The project submission for Friday is group, and there is only one unit test needed. Somebody's asking, is the classwork a group submission where one person submits, or does everyone submit individually? Today's classwork, any class activity, well, today's classwork is a individual submission. Everybody submits individually today for the quiz. Somebody's asking, for reviewing purposes, could you name your live streams from now on? The topic we're going over for that lecture, maybe. You could also just cross-reference them with the date. I am honestly not sure how to name them off the top of my head. I would just recommend that you use the date to cross-reference them. Also, you can look at the first couple seconds. The what do you call it? The title is usually on the first page, first slide. I only know how to do a unit test. I don't know how to do a unit test running via GitHub Action. So you create a unit test in your project. Once you've done that, the idea is to create a GitHub action that automatically runs that same unit test. Okay, so it's the difference between running the unit test on your computer versus running the unit test in the cloud on continuous integration on GitHub's computer. So that's really all I'm saying is you're going to run the same darn unit test, just not on your computer. You're going to run it in the cloud using GitHub Actions. I hope that clarifies. Will we need to have Android Studio and GitHub ready for the quiz? No, you will not. You will just need to kind of have a good overview of this class. It's just asking you basic questions about this class, and that's it. It's 4 multiple choice questions about this class. I would have access to the lecture notes, but that's it, which of course you can get from the syllabus. Great questions today, guys and gals. Thank you for all the questions. Where's my thumb? Oh, there we go. Great questions. I'm going to go here in just a second, so if you got any last second questions, get them in there. And otherwise, I hope you guys and gals have a great Monday, Tuesday. I will see you again on Wednesday. Good luck keeping up with classes. I'm doing my best to keep up too. It's a little intense, but we're going to get through this together. Hope you all have a great week. See you on Wednesday.